When you are creating or revising your program learning outcomes, one resource to consider is the program overview contained within the course catalog. The description that's contained in that section often has general or broad wording that you might be able to integrate into your program learning outcomes. The other resource you might want to consider is if you have developed program learning outcomes previously. So you may want to pull up that as a resource, because quite often, if you have them already created, you may be able to modify, to consolidate, or simply edit some of them to meet the criteria needed for program learning outcomes in this round of our HLC reporting. One thing to consider, if your program is new and you're writing your PLOs for the first time, you might want to ask yourself, what are my 5 main goals or aims that I would like my students to achieve in this program? And use that as your guide to have a starting base for developing and constructing your program learning outcomes. Now remember, you are being requested to create 5 program learning outcomes, each of which align directly with a specific ILC that has been created by Southwestern Michigan College. So as you can see here, I have a sample page, and this is from the School of Business for the AAS. And here's the course catalog description. And here are the program learning outcomes that they had developed prior in 2016. So just using the information contained on this page, I'm going to do just kind of a general sample walkthrough of creating a PLO. Now, just for transparency, this is certainly not my area of expertise. We are simply taking this as a sample to just kind of emulate and demonstrate to you the process or what you could do as some possible sampling for creating PLOs. So we're going to create a sample, and we're going to align each of our program learning outcomes in our samples with a specific ILC. We want to start our wording, or we want to start the wording of each PLO, and what's recommended is you use the graduating student. The reason being is because these program learning outcomes are going to be measuring the outcomes of successful completion of the program. So in other words, what students will have achieved by successfully completing that program. So let's see, let's start with our first one, which is we're going to do very effective communication methods in both oral and written English used in business. Now we are going to link this with the ILC. I believe it's number 1, but it's communication. So a couple of things I just want to point out for you to keep in mind. Number 1, you need to use a declarative sentence. And do note, this is not a complicated sentence, it's a simple sentence. You also want to use general terms or broad wording. Remember, these are kind of overarching goals or aims. That's what really we are measuring in our outcomes. And you also want to utilize a measurable verb. Now, the verbs are taken from Bloom's taxonomy, and you are being requested to please utilize verbs that are contained within the upper 3 levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So you can refer to the resource on this Moodle page where it's exactly like this. There are the upper 3, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So please choose an appropriate verb for your content or for the outcome that's being measured within, and that verb needs to be contained within one of these three areas, the upper levels, the highest three of Bloom's taxonomy. So let's try another one. And sorry, I went the wrong way. Let me see if I can get there. Okay, the second one is analyze. So in analyze, you'll notice it's in the one of the upper three levels of Bloom's taxonomy. We matched this with critical thinking. That's the ILC. And the other thing I would like to point out is you do not need to use the exact wording or exact word or phrasing that's contained within the ILC in your PLO. You are allowed to use implied wording. Now, in this case, we use fairly direct wording, which, we mimicked communication, and the ILC was communication. But in this one, you will notice we are analyzing and we are applying this or we are linking and aligning this with the ILC of critical thinking. The other thing I want to point out is when you are creating your PLOs, be sure that you are addressing the program-specific content. So you can see in both of these, we are mentioning items. So for example, we're referring to business because this is a business program, and then specific items within here within the business program. The next sample I just want to share with you is in regards to ethical behavior. And in this case, again, we use the exact wording, ethical. And although we used it in this one, we didn't use it in this one. So I just want to kind of reiterate, it doesn't matter. You may do implied wording. Just make sure when you use implied wording, you are conveying the meaning, and it's obvious the alignment with the ILC that you want it to be aligned under. A couple more. Here is one that we are linking with engagement. And here is another that we are linking with global awareness and appreciation. And again, we are just using information from what is contained up here, and we use this sample from the School of Business. So I just want to make sure I have this in here so you're not confused, which is communication. So as you can see, when you are completed with your PLOs, you will have 5, and each one will be aligned specifically with the appropriate ILC that it aligns under. And you will also know, just one last word, that you do not need really long, extensive sentences. You can be fine with shorter sentences, but do make sure whatever you use, you are utilizing only one verb in each of your PLOs, and that verb is in one of the upper 3 levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and that you're using a declarative sentence or statement.